Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome from wherever you're dialing into for this RPS Scotland talk. My name is Dave Ferguson and I sit on the RPS Scotland committee. And I'm the host for this evening. James, our regional organiser, is elsewhere, so he's handed that responsibility over to me this evening. Also present is Stephen Whitaker, our RPS Scotland secretary, and he will monitor the chat window, which is where we would ask you to place any questions that you do have for tonight's speaker. And at the end of the talk, we'll endeavour to get through as many of them as we can for you. So it is my pleasure to introduce you to tonight's speaker, Kieran Dodds. Kieran describes himself as a non-fiction photographer and is known for his research-driven photo stories and portraiture. His personal work considers the environment and culture, tracing global events through daily lives, and he's Scottish. And I will leave Kieran now to tell you more about his portfolio of work and the various diverse projects he's worked on and his new book that he's just launched today. So over to you, Kieran, and thank you for joining us. Thanks,
Dave. Thanks everybody for turning up. It's Wednesday night. Location's on, but you're here, so that's good. Thanks as well, Dave, for using the non-fiction photographer title, which people don't usually mention, actually. And I wish they would. You can maybe ask later why I did that, but I won't digress into that just now. So yeah, my name's Kieran Dodds. I'm a photographer based in Edinburgh, and I'm going to show you one particular story tonight that I've been working on for a while. But to do that, I've got to go back in time as well. So I'll be taking you on a little whirlwind trip through my life. But it's only going to be an hour, 40 minutes talking probably, or until there's 0 people left in the room. So there's my name, I before E except after C. KieranDodds.com as well. Feel free to email me through that afterwards if you've got any other questions. I'm very happy to answer them. But let's jump into this to begin with. And it's so nice to be here today, of all days. RPS has had quite a foundational role, I'd say, actually, in my photography. This photo was taken when I was 7. It's the first photo I remember taking. And it was taken in Edmonton Zoo. And I remember the moment. I remember raising the camera to this raccoon, and at the moment I pressed the shutter, it turned towards me. And I was so delighted that I ran off to tell my dad and show him. Obviously, it was film, so I couldn't show him anything. But just that joy and wonder of being able to capture something and then being able to share it with somebody else. And that really is what I still do, in effect. That's my motivation. And I'll maybe tease that out a bit as we go on, like the mindset of a photographer. I'm interested in technical things, but I'm more interested in the motivation of photographers. Why do you do it as much as what do you do? So that was age 7. And then after that, I went on to just keep taking photographs. And then along came a friend called Jamie, and his dad was at Stirling Camera Club, Stirling and District Camera Club, no less. And we used to go along, Jamie and I, teenagers, to the Cowan Centre every Wednesday like this, and we'd have a can of Coke and we'd get a bit excitable and we'd just look at slides. But actually that was the foundation to my, I suppose, being critical about my photography, really looking at a picture and analysing and working out how it could be improved technically, but also how to get in that missing element, the most difficult thing, which is meaning. How do you make meaningful pictures? And that is something which then I went into my career to do. So at this stage, when I was 7, I loved animals. Through my time at Stirling Camera Club, lots of pictures of birds and empty landscapes. And then I went to university. And when I was at uni, I was studying zoology up in Aberdeen. And this is a sketchy scan here, if you're wondering why if some of you are going, oh, it's a bit noisy. This is a scan of a transparency from our final year expedition to the Mulanje Massif in Malawi. And I was there to study blue monkeys. A friend was there to do trees, the Mulanje cedar, and another to do fish. And so we spent time raising the money to go there to do the expedition. And we spent 2 months living on this mountain, 3 months in total away in Malawi. And for me, I realized at the end I spent more time taking photographs. I had a big wad of sort of Velvia and Sensia film, which I was sent back to the UK. And I thought, well, actually, and I think my professors agreed that I maybe wasn't the strongest in terms of the research, although I did all right. But actually, it was the communication of what we'd seen that was the thing that really fired me up. That was the thing I was passionate about. That's the thing I got up early for. And the thing I wanted to spend my time doing is documenting it. So I left university. I got a job at a newspaper in Edinburgh writing briefly, and then a job in Aberdeen working for a news agency before then the Evening Times in Glasgow. But then I'm going to skip forward. Don't worry, it's 20 years. I'm going to do it very quick. Skip forward 5 years. I got a bursary as Young Photographer of the Year for the UK and Ireland. And I chose again to go back to my zoological roots. So in between, I've been photographing all kinds of mad stuff in Glasgow. And I like people generally. Not all people in Glasgow are mad, but like just general life, you know. So when I got the opportunity to do a story on anything, I decided to go here to Zambia, to Kasanka National Park, and I documented something no one had really done before, and it ended up getting a huge exposure and another award, a World Press Photo Award, which then launched me into my freelance career. So that's 2005. In 2006, I left. And then fast forward another few years, and here we are in Tibet. So another time I'd written a proposal, and I go off and do these projects that are really close to my heart. And in between, I'm doing commissions as well. And this is the turning point for me to then go full-time, focusing on the longer term projects. These are the things that I'm passionate about. 2 months on the Tibetan plateau. I'd spent a month and a bit there before, and just documenting this landscape and the people within nature. That is the theme that links all these works from being a student to today, to the story I'm going to show you from Ethiopia, but through Tibet. But really, tonight's story begins in Shetland, of all places, when I was in this camper van, or camper house, as I think it should be called, because it's insanely big. And I was up there with again, I didn't quite intend this, but it does fit. I'd written a proposal to a French photo festival for a story I'd like to cover. And it was I basically just thought, what would I like to do this summer? And I thought, well, I'd love to go and photograph seabirds in Scotland rather than going somewhere else. And so I realized actually in Shetland, you've got this proximity of abundant nature and abundant industry, the gas and oil side by side with the wildlife. And so I thought maybe I could do something with that. And so I came up with this idea for seabird cities to show the abundance of nature next to humanity. And I managed to put in the proposal for a camper van for 3 weeks. And I just toured about Shetland, which is great. And that's my living room at the back of the camper van. It's an insane beast, which I had to drive up from Glasgow. I was terrified getting on the ferry, but such is life. And it was actually at the end of the trip, I was sheltering in a friend's quarry. When I got to Shetland, he'd said, you know, if you need a quarry, I've got one. And I thought it was unusual. But then after 3 nights sort of shaking around on Sombra Head, I went up to his quarry and I stayed there quite a lot because it was not windy. And so it was the last week and I was in the quarry coming to the end of this project. And it was that perennial feeling of like, what am I going to do next? What is the next project? And I got an email from something I'd written a few months before. And it was the RPS saying, congratulations, you've been awarded the environmental bursary to do your project in Ethiopia. And so I was over the moon in this quarry in Shetland. And that set me forward. That's 2015. And ever since then, I've been immersed in some way or other in Ethiopia. Here's some pics from that trip. Can I just check, just as one of these Zoom things, just to make sure you're sharing my screen, you're seeing the full screen. Dave, maybe just say, you're not seeing the little bar of all the people at the side, are you?
No, I'm certainly seeing your full screen, I'm sure.
Good. I'm just seeing like people's names and stuff. That's fine, as long as the viewer experience is optimal. Thanks. So yeah, here's a picture of Sombra Head. This is the day we arrived. It's Gale Force 9 going up on the ferry in midsummer. And it was slightly rough. But the good thing about it was the waves, when I got off the ferry, were smashing against the rocks, and it wasn't as good as that for the rest of the trip, actually. So I made the most of it and got that shot. And this is from the Isle of May, actually. Just again, showing the connection between people and nature, and the way that the seabirds are a window under the waves. And a kind of idea of where this appeared afterwards, Sunday Times mag, in the Far East as well, and in France, and even on Instagram. I also do other stuff, not just nature. This is a New York Times trip to Greenland. Just thought I'll put this in to show you that I do other stuff. That was for the world's shortest soccer season, and that was one of the coolest assignments ever. And then Ilkay Gundogan, when he was injured before he became super awesome for Man City recently, he was injured, and we spent a lot of time just with him. And I jumped in the pool and whipped my clothes off. I had trunks on prepared. I just needed permission to get into them. And here we go. So skipping back to the RPS stuff, we've got the awards day in London, or evening, in the Royal Society. And I picked up this certificate for basically submitting an idea. I hadn't actually taken a photo. And it was exciting. It was great. They had champagne, and he met lots of cool people. Bryan Adams was getting an honorary fellowship at the end. And so I was standing there. I'm not one to like fawn over celebrities. But he, as he walked past, said, "Well done, nice one, mate." And so I said, "Oh, he clearly wants a selfie with me." So I took a selfie with him, just to make him happy. But that was the nice thing about the RPS. There's just so many interesting people. It wasn't just Bryan Adams. There's lots of others. But anyway, here's the story. This is what I'm going to talk about for most of the time here. The church forests of Ethiopia. So if you don't know Ethiopia, it's on the right there, just below the Sahara Desert and the Sahel region, which is this very arid area. Ethiopia, to me, was kind of stuck in the 80s in terms of my imagination. I'd had read things on it since, but it just seemed very, well, just the picture most of us have of it, very basic subsistence agriculture. And it was on a trip to Malawi. It was actually to Malanje, about 15 years after I'd first been there, for a NGO, that I went through Addis Airport. And when I was there, the atmosphere was just incredible. Like the energy, this sense of a dynamic change going on in the country. And about the same time, a friend had just moved there to work for DFID, and he was doing work with industry and these commercial factories. And he was talking about how China were outsourcing to Ethiopia, and it really piqued my interest. And so I started researching it. And at that point, I thought, well, like in China, at the headwaters of the Yangtze and the Yellow River, where I was, you could see the effects of the industry downstream. I thought, I wonder in Ethiopia, amazing as it is, all this development, I wonder what the impact will be on the environment there. And so I started researching and feeling a bit grim, because most nature stories are end badly, don't they? So as I was researching, I discovered this incredible phenomenon, which actually had a kind of positive effect on me. If you're on a map later, wow, you're friends with this. So zoom in, there's Ethiopia. You see a little lake, Lake Tana. And if you zoom in on that, you get Amhara province and Lake Tana, the source of the Blue Nile. So Lake Tana is then surrounded by these forest fragments. Amhara, just for a sense of context, is about the size of England and Wales. So it's quite a large province. And in it, they've recorded about 11,000 so far. Some people put it at 30,000 across the country, but 11,000 of these church forest patches. So when you go later on your iPhone or whatever, zoom into Lake Tana and just keep zooming in. And any dot of green you see around, keep zooming in. And in the middle of each of those will be a little circular building, and that's the church building. And it's just this incredible phenomenon. And so when you actually get to the landscape, you see these patches of forest, and I'd seen it from above on Google Maps. And to suddenly be in the landscape, you're confronted with this issue of how to document it. But I'll maybe park that for a second. I just want to go into the story of what is going on here first, and then we can maybe go back to that. And if I forget anything, just put it in the question box at the end. Because these forests are the remnants of a once great canopy. So in the last 100 years, about 90% of the forest has been lost. to agriculture, to development, to conflict as well. They've been pushed back and pushed back. And you can see that there, these little standalone trees, large trees that have been kept for some benefit, maybe medicinal benefits. But the slow creep of cattle and agriculture pushing into the forest, thinning the edge, killing off the trees, and they're shrinking away. And so while it's amazing that these forests have been preserved for centuries as a doctrine of the faith, as I'll explain, they are disappearing. And so it is a story of hope, but also one that requires some change. This is Lake Tana, source of the Blue Nile. And it is the place you see the canopy at its fullest. This is on the Zegi Peninsula. And in there are monastery buildings, there are church buildings, and there are communities within the forest as well. And they see it as a sacred place. And so they don't destroy it. They don't clear fell it, but they actually protect it. They see it as something which has dignity. They see it, in fact, as part of the building, the church building itself. And the forest is the clothes of the church. And so when you're in this landscape, it's full of life. People are going to and fro to church services or to home or to gather. There's coffee within there as well. People have small crops of that. So it's a living place. And going from the dry, arid landscape around these forests to suddenly pass through into the forest, you go from this silent, dry and hot field into a very cool and fragrant and noise-filled landscape. It's full of life. It's like an oasis, but it's not around a spring. The whole landscape would have been like this. It just happens to be protected around the church building itself. And it's almost like the building is emitting a force field. I mean, you look on Google Maps, you see these little circles like UFOs have landed from space, and they're emitting this force field. And in a sense, they are extraterrestrial. They are pointing the people around them to somewhere beyond this life, to another world, a heavenly realm. And that heavenly realm has an impact on the earth here. So how these theological ideas have shaped the landscape really intrigued me at the time, and still does. The more I look into it, the more intriguing it becomes. But they're not places that are detached from life. They're central to it. They inform things that happen outside, and also the rites of passage of birth and death and everything in between. So they are places of celebration, of mourning, but they're not in any way kept apart from normal life, although they are special. And they have these festivals like Timkit, where they take the Ark of the Covenant replica, a lot of sort of Old Testament Judaic ideas in the Orthodox Tewahedo theology. But they take this little Ark of the Covenant to a river source, keep it there overnight, and then bring it back with great rejoicing and celebration. And this place in particular was known for its holy water as well. So it was a great place to be. But as I say, these passages of life and death and everything in between. And one thing you really notice is the way that art plays such an important role. So in that door there, it's a very basic drawing, but opposite it are these incredibly lush and bright paintings depicting historical events, biblical stories, but all of them have this embellishment of nature. They look like the illuminated gospels you get, the Book of Kells and things like that. And around the same time, they have very similar illuminated manuscripts in Ethiopia. The connections between these worlds, the Celtic realm, and even Byzantium and into Ethiopia is actually closer than you think, which maybe I can say more on later. But this shouldn't come as a surprise in many ways, because the symbol of Christianity is a tree. So the Bible itself describes it as a tree. It was in the Old Testament saying, "Cursed is the man who hangs on a tree." And then later on, after Jesus has died on the cross, one of his followers says he was hung on a tree, and it becomes the symbol of Christianity, the tree. And actually, it's probably one of the best Bible overviews. It's quite a complex book, isn't it, the Bible? But over the year, I've just been thinking, it's actually quite a simple way to see the whole story. You've got the tree at the beginning in the Garden of Eden, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, where it goes wrong. They were offered the tree of life in the background, but they took the wrong tree. And then this curse comes in, and then at the end there's a tree of life. Again, it's offered with the fruits for the healing of nations in the center of the new city. And in the center of it, you have this tree, the symbol of Christianity, where that tree of curse becomes the tree of life for those who believe that it transfers that righteousness from him. So that really struck me as interesting, that the Christian symbol is a tree. It's an earthbound, an earthly symbol which reaches to heaven. That's what trees do. It's almost a symbol for us to see and be reminded of that interpretation. And so here we leave this landscape from the ground. And I'll maybe just talk as well about the sort of approach to how to photograph this, because so far we're ground-based, aren't we? And I'm just going to show a quick video just so I can just let you get a sense of what's going on in this space. It'll just be a couple of minutes. So I alluded to the theological nature of this landscape, and I couldn't just ignore that when you're trying to document it. I'm, as I said, non-fiction, so that kind of tends towards documentary and just observing and seeing things as they are, but that still requires some approach. And so when I thought about it, I looked at the creation accounts in Genesis, which they are basing this landscape on, and the way they view church. And in that, there's two lenses, actually. So the first chapter, you've got the up there perspective, you know, God, the creator above all, making the earth in the 7 days. And then you have God down here in the garden in the next chapter. And it's amazing because that's the tension of that through the whole Bible is quite interesting. But you've got this up there, God omnipotent, above all things, and then his presence in the garden as well, walking in the cool of the day. So I thought that was really interesting. And I thought, well, I've got the on the ground works, but you also need that heavenly perspective. You think of the angel's eye view or God's eye view from being from above, but actually in the Genesis account, it's on the ground. God's eye view is down and up. And so then I wanted to interplay these two things. And between get my first time there and then being able to get back to do the aerials required some time. There were states of emergencies in the country, so I couldn't go. states of emergency at home when we had twins, and it was just all quite difficult as well, trying to get funding to go back. So the first trip, that was the Royal Photographic Society's grant, all the stuff down there. And then with that body of work, I could approach other people to try and get out there, just to give you an idea of how these things progress, which is slowly, generally. So I finally got out there with some drone abilities and trained up here, got the full PFCO here, and then got out there to do these aerial shots. And it just gives you a totally different perspective. It allows you to tell the story in a new way, and in the way that I first saw when I was on Google Maps, that incredible sort of interaction of nature and man, and how this building, which has been constructed amidst this kind of life force, and you can see all the different paths people take, and the way they're threshing out the grain on that one on the right. You can see a person, the cattle. You can see all these 1,000 different decisions. So these forests have been preserved, but also they're being eroded by human decision. These desire paths as people cut through and eventually kill the forest unknowingly. And some of them are not in as bad a state as that one on the right. Some don't have boundary walls yet. I'll maybe talk about that. But they are still different personalities. Each one is dedicated to a different saint. This is Georgios on the left, George, and they have different personalities. And I felt like they were like portraits. I saw faces, and not many other people did. And I wondered if they were maybe just being polite, that you maybe shouldn't be seeing faces everywhere, but I see faces. And then this one on the left, you can see a very novel, pioneering conservation wall, which the scientists who let me into this place, Dr. Alamayo Ishete, he's a global expert, because he is the local one. And then also Dr. Meg Lauman, who's American. They brought me into the forest. It was his name that allowed me to travel around on my own. But they pioneered these walls, which are built by the locals from rock, from the fields, and they build up these incredible structures, which again harbor life themselves. So they bring more life. They've got lizards, they've got insects, they've got birds. And these forests then become these hubs of life which benefit the land around. So like I was saying about people coming in, it informs life. It also supports life. It raises water tables. It cools the climate locally. So it encourages good crops and mitigates against changes in the local climate as well. I love this one on the right as well, the Ethiopian colors. That's the one on my wall. I see it every day and I still don't tire of it or fail to see new things, actually. It's just a remarkable structure. And you see on the left, the kind of peak human activity, the agriculture, the growing, they have to survive, they have to live. The population is booming. It's meant to double in about 30 years. It's the second most populous nation in Africa. And there's been a huge drive to development, which is good, and to raise standards, which is important. And actually, it's not all bad news with that, because on the right-hand side, what looks grim is actually new life. This is a church plant. So because of the growing population, the church next door has planted a new building, and you can see the darker area is where they have, you've got new life coming through. So they've actually set aside land for a new forest, because it's so deep in their theology that the church needs a forest. And in some ways that's practical, because the building itself doesn't fit everyone. It's like, again, the Old Testament idea of it's the temple. It's got the Holy of Holies and the holy place. Only the priests are meant to go in. So in the baking hot sun, having trees is quite a useful thing. But even then, they haven't necessarily thought consciously about this over the years. So they have been declining. But the work of Dr. Alamayo and Meg Lauman has meant people have been able to see afresh that their forest is dying, but there are things they can do to save them in that. So this photograph was published first in Nature, which as a zoology graduate was like dream. And the first time Nature had published a double-page picture in the magazine on the news section before, and they also did this beautiful online article, which you can find on there if you look up Nature Church Forests. So that was the first publication. And then National Geographic ran something online as well, looking into the forests. And so that for me was coming back. I wasn't settled. As I was saying before, it's not just about gathering photographs for the sake of it. There is curiosity, there is intrigue, and there's a desire to understand the world. But there's also this desire to share it. You don't just stay with that knowledge, especially on something that requires action. And so I got into these places. This is in Geofrance, which is the biggest geographic magazine in France. They did a beautiful spread. So it's getting huge shows. It won a Sony World Photo Award. And I went down to London for that. Met the Ethiopian ambassador, and got on Ethiopian TV. So it's getting amazing publicity. Had an exhibition in Orange County near LA. Had some in downtown LA as well afterwards. And we had a symposium there with theologians and scientists and artists. And it was just amazing. It was so exciting. And I was so pleased to have basically taken what was an obscure scientific journal research area and brought it to light to show people that there are stories of hope. There are stories where people are preserving things and can teach us how to preserve things, that how our ideas shape landscapes out there. But actually, in the years that have passed, I've not been satisfied, because ultimately things don't seem to change. So all these patches have been mapped over the years, and more being discovered. But sadly, over time, they're also disappearing. And every time I think of these places, I always feel this burden. And especially speaking to Dr. Alamayu, just a sense of, like, what's the point of me going there and gathering things? And then it just gets worse. I was entrusting it to society, in a sense, through publications, thinking National Geographic, surely Nature. Like, these people will be reading this and be engaged to do something. But over time, it feels like there's been a lot of false promises, a lot of hopes and things that haven't come to pass. And even people working to preserve them are few and far between. And so that is partly why I decided to publish a book this year ahead of the COP summit, because it just seems like I need to gather it together in a way that people can experience it, to understand it for themselves, and to connect it to our lands as well. So that's what I've been working on the last few months. This was the concept we came up with because obviously the patches of the forest and the desire to connect them, to protect them, is required. That's a basic conservation corridors idea, but also it's a journey. It's like a road trip, but it's on foot, and we're going between these different patches. And so the book itself is a kind of slower read, going through the forests, going from place to place. I was thinking about it today. I thought it's kind of like tree bathing in a book. So hopefully I'll come out the other end feeling better than when you went in. So this just announced, what's the time now? 3 hours ago. So I did it so that I could speak at the RPS thing and be able to have something to speak about. So it's coming out in next month, and a book's quite a big undertaking. I'm happy to answer questions about practicalities linked to that. But it's just been brilliant making things. My background is, well, when I was growing up, I just loved getting slides, the physical thing, or a print. And then going into newspapers, I was always delighted at the end of the day to find a paper with my photo in it. And that never tires, actually, when you get a photo printed. And so a book is the ultimate form of that. And sometimes it can be a vanity project, but in this case, I'm hoping it's some benefit to the place. In fact, I've already paid for and pledged 1,000 trees, native trees, to be planted in Amhara with the book. So that's all paid for and done. Whether I sell any or not is another question. But it's just a really, I just wanted to make some impact. I thought, here's me telling a story and benefiting from the forest immensely. And so it's now payback in that. And it's just been so nice. It's a 10:8 format. It's been so nice being able to lay out the photos and to see them new, and then I spent a week or two just going through the entire shoot and finding new work, pictures I hadn't actually found before. Obviously, there's the aerial shots, but there's new pictures there as well. And then trying to think, how do you edit it together in a way that is different from a magazine? It's more a meditative publication. It's got pieces of the local text, the anaphora and things like that, so that as you go through, you get a voice of the local people in that, and it's got the red edges, like the books that they hold, these little prayer books they have, or the liturgy books, as you go through, and the gold and the green and the red of the Ethiopian flag. So creatively, it's quite fun, but ultimately, it's about showing it to people and allowing people to experience the photographs in a new way, to make sense of it, where they might only have seen it in part. This is a picture which I hadn't actually taken out before, and I love it. This amazing market spilling out between these two forest patches, and there's so much detail in it and color. So that's a nice one to enjoy. And then the little text just throughout to sort of put it into context. And I commissioned a professor in America. He's written about how basically the modern environmental movement has religious roots in sort of Calvinist Puritanism in America. And so it's really good to be able to get him to respond to this and connect Central Park, which is built with that idea in mind, and to give people respite from the daily grind and a place to look up with these places. These are not far removed, and I hope people will not go away from this thinking, that's nice for Ethiopia. Well done, the Orthodox. But to actually see that we are connected to this place, and especially in the UK, where they're the second largest donor country for the UK and have been in the top 3 for many years. So we are intimately connected with this country. So it's good to be involved in thinking how our government are involved in that. I'm also doing these little prints, A5 prints, which then go on to plant a tree. And I'm just telling you this, I'm not doing it as a pitch, although I'm happy for you to buy them. It's more just to say like ways to actually make an impact, how the photography can translate to people actually the story changing the situation, which I haven't really done before. So we'll see how it goes. But I just thought it's a way to like start moving the story on in a sense. And these little print sets with these gorgeous gold foil embossed and the aerials, 5 aerials in that, like so. There it is gleaming. And I think that's where I end the ramble just now. I'm aware that that's perfect, actually, 40 minutes. So I'm quite happy to talk through any aspect of what I've been going on about here to bring things to light. I've missed out heaps, but please feel free to ask questions.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Kieran, for that. Stephen's been keeping an eye on the chat window, and I'm sure he's got some questions to ask you. But if anyone is online and wants to ask any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat window on your various devices, and we'll certainly put them to Kieran.
Yeah, so Colin's asked a couple of questions. The first one was more related to the process of writing a proposal.
Yeah.
How do you, I presume what he means is it something that comes to you when you're lying in bed at night and you think, oh, I fancy doing that, or in a caravan in Shetland? And
yeah.
then what format do you use to take that forward? Who do you approach?
Yeah.
So that was his first question.
Okay, all right, okay, yeah.
A good start, and that could take you an hour or two.
That's right. What's the second one?
Well, the second one was both him and Juanita were saying, where can they buy the book?
Oh, great.
And the prints. So that was I presume.
Oh, fantastic.
So your pitch has worked there for a start. There we go.
Oh, where is it? Just go to my website. Ta-da. Yeah, Kieran Dodds. There we go. Or any social media stuff. But it's just, my name. And it's in the shop there. Great questions about the funding, because it's funny. I think I'm pretty bad at writing proposals and getting funding. But doing this talk tonight, I've just realized all these things I've just talked about were funded by proposals. So the Shetland one, you'll see bottom right there, Instagram. I'd hit a wall creatively, and it was February, which is always when you hit walls, isn't it? And I went to London just to sort of get some mind space, and I saw a friend, and I just thought, I'm not going to think about work. I'm not going to see clients down here. I'll go and do something I really enjoy. What would I really enjoy? And so my pal Ben and I went to the zoo and saw all kinds of things. Saw a pig eating a pigeon. All kinds of mad stuff going on. But at one point, I was enchanted by the penguin pool. And so without thinking about it, I pulled out my camera and did a slow-mo video, and did this video and uploaded it on the way home. And then on the Sunday morning on the train back, my phone started pinging like crazy. And I was like, where are all these likes and followers coming from? And it turned out Instagram had put it on their video of the day. And I kind of analyzed that very quickly. I thought, why on earth is this connected with people? And it was because, like, when I was at the zoo age 7, I'd seen something I was fascinated by. I hadn't really thought about it, and I just instantly shared it. I'd connected these things. And at that point, I thought, right, if I'm going to do a proposal, the Saint-Brieuc Festival proposal was coming up the next week. I knew that. They had good funding for projects. And I thought, well, what would I like to do? And it seems indulgent. But I just thought, well, I quite liked it. Well, obviously, the seabirds, the birds thing, I like birds. So I thought then let's do something with that, you know. And that was a slightly back to front way of doing it. But I thought I want to do something that I've got passion for. And then actually there's always the passion growing up with birds was conservation and protecting and things. So that's how that one came about. The Tibetan stuff, it was a Winston Churchill travel fellowship. And again, it was a friend. When I'd been to China first time, I'd been out there for a while, and I'd envisaged this story of how the yak is a symbol of Tibet. So you could tell a non-political story through the yak, because yak dung allowed people to survive, basically, the dung for fuel, to cook food, but also to graze for meat, for the tents, everything. And so I started it then, and then I met somebody who's a conservationist, and he said, oh, you should come out with us sometime, we're going further out. And it took a few years, and the Winston Churchill Travel Fellowship thing came up, and I thought, what would I love to do? And so that, again, it was so close to deadline, and I've been reading a bit about it, and then it was like an hour before or something, and I just batted out a brief synopsis of it. And the Winston Churchill application was actually very accessible. They didn't want too much to begin with. Then the interview, they grilled you. That was quite traumatic. But I managed to get that funding like that. So the story was kind of like natural. Like, it's always the way, like stories, you can have an idea and something you want to do. That's the first thing. Embrace a story you want to do. But then it's also, where's the access? And maybe the door's closed just now, or maybe you know somebody who's saying, come and do this. You know, listen to that voice. Like my friend John in Ethiopia saying, come and do a story in Ethiopia. And I hadn't fully thought about it. And then at the same time, I traveled through Ethiopia, and then the connection with here about how the environment would pay the cost. So it's a kind of free flowing in some ways. How do these things go? And like I've not even talked about the gingers, mercifully, but that wasn't through a proposal. That's maybe why I haven't talked about it. But that was an idea which came just from brainstorming, thinking about what are the things which relate to Scottish identity before the referendum. So there's always a kind of news hook as well. There's kind of, so like doing the book now, I do the book now because they've got the COP summit coming up, and this is a real pinnacle moment for change in the world potentially, and I want their voice to be heard.
Just on the COP26, Kieran, I know there's lots of sort of side shows and sort of climate hubs and all sorts of stuff. Yeah. Are you showing any of your photographs or doing any talks at the COP?
RPS only. This is it. I was hoping to do a talk there, but the book's actually coming out the week after now. But that's okay, because I think the whole circus of it will be exciting to be at, and I'll hopefully be accredited for that. And there's things, and the opportunities will probably come. But it's just a chance where the world is actually, people are consciously thinking about this, looking for solutions. And here's a solution in Ethiopia of how to support grassroots work. And the reason I put in the book this map of the Great Green Wall, which some of you might have heard of, it's this amazing international ambition to plant up the Sahel areas that have been where desertification has been pushing into fertile lands, and it's been amazing. But there's Ethiopian church forests, this network of over 11,000 churches, and they're no way involved. There's no connection. They've not joined the dots between these mega projects, these ambitious, incredible, like laudable projects, and these local ones. So if in some way I can help people see those links, and you don't necessarily need to involve like grassroots and the mega structures, but I just think you've got to hear both.
There's a techie question. Colin was wondering about camera kit and lenses and drones. So the camera kit looked like a Canon in your camper home. So you still Canon, and the drone?
Still Canon.
Did you buy a drone, or did you just use one for the time?
Yeah, and I bought two actually because I was paranoid one would get injured, and it did. So that was good. My wife thought I was mad, but I got a second one. So two drones. Yeah, Canon. Since I went freelance, Canon had the edge then, so I went freelance, and I did a video for Canon back then, and they gave me a good fee, and so it's made me loyal to them ever since.
Even though you won a Sony Picture Award.
Yeah, that's great. Good old Sony. I've actually got an RX1, which is it's the same as the 5D3. It's got a beautiful full frame lens and a full frame sensor, and it's a fixed 35 lens, and I've used that a lot. I got a great puffin shot with it, like really close up and showing the landscape. So basically, in Ethiopia, I was using the Sony RX1, the Canon 5D3, two drones, well, one eventually, kit, an iPhone, of course, because on the left there as well, this picture, iPhone is one of the main cameras I use, and that's for social media. But also, I did an article in Shetland just of the iPhone pictures, and an article about that. So Apple, Sony, Canon, DJI.
Well, just the best camera you have is the one you have on your pocket, isn't it?
That's right.
Juanita wants to know more.
I've just got a dirty mask in my pocket. That's what I've got these days, isn't it?
Yeah, we've all got one of them in our pockets.
Rotting away.
Juanita was wanting to know more about the kind of the structure and your feeling behind the stuff. Are you more? Do you what are you informed most about the conservation aspects of your work, or by the human relationship, or the landscape? Or is it, as you kind of alluded to, a much more spiritual and symbolic aspect that you like to hope to achieve through it all?
Through the book or through the story?
I think through this, which you mentioned Ethiopia in particular, so I guess through the book and the story of Ethiopia.
Well, so my approach to this, so I come at it from many angles. I think the conservation, environmental, zoology angle was how I first came to it, and that intrigued me. I think having been in Tibet and seeing how it was the local Tibetan Buddhist nomads, formerly animist Tibetan Buddhist, how they were the best suited to conserve these places, I started to see actually indigenous beliefs to protect local landscapes is a way forward. And then I was really just surprised that we've been fed this idea that Christianity has destroyed the world environment through the centuries. Certainly I was told that at university, and I'd kind of questioned that already myself, but to see this, it really intrigued me. So it was partly the environmental aspect, partly the intrigue of like what is going on here, and then how that links to home as well. So I think from the book, I don't know, I want people to go away, I don't know, maybe, yeah, I'd love them to read the book and have a spiritual experience of some sort, but I mean, it's there to inform, but I find like to inform is too dry a word. I hope it's like poetry. I hope it delights and creates a sense of wonder. So that'd be the outcome, wonder. You can do with that what you want.
And talking about indigenous populations, is that what the ginger is to Scotland then? Is that the link there?
Yeah, I don't think they've got protected status yet.
Good. Well, Juanita's definitely a fan. She's going to be buying the book, I can tell you that.
Right. And
you're going to be planting trees with the proceeds of the book?
So, yeah, so it's 700 copies of the book, but I've already put aside, I paid for the 1,000 trees. And so Ethiopia is amazing in terms of their ambition for tree planting. They've done billions, like over the years, the last few years, like doing billions of tree planting, individual trees planted. But very few of them are native species, and the difference it makes to have a native tree and the life that brings is just unquantifiably greater. And in terms of its longevity, if you plant, like they're planting bamboo, which is quick growing, useful for building stuff, but it also destroys the soil and it will get away from them. Like eucalyptus, so these forests have eucalyptus for that reason, for construction. So putting in the native trees will also, in their lifespan, be far greater for the local environment. So 1,000 of them, plus each of those cards would be another tree, and the little sets are to help fund the conservation walls, which are quite pricey, the walls. So I'm hoping just to contribute something towards that, in the small way I can. I am, after all, an independent artist, so it's not like I can. I think the main thing I bring to the table is being able to tell the story and let people run with it.
It's interesting about the trees, because I mean, Scotland obviously has got its own problems with afforestation in the past as well.
Yep.
And there's a very, very strong parallel to that then, isn't there?
Yeah. And I just did a story for an American website called Manga Bay on rewilding, and wrote like a 2,000-word essay, and photos about that. Because again, that's how I got into conservation. It was the Scots pine forests that just are my favorite place on earth. And so just this spring and summer, I started documenting them. And you're right, it's having the right trees in the right places. You can plant however many billion you want, but unless they're the right species, they're not necessarily going to make things better. They might make things worse.
When you say you write your essays, do you write your essay and then go and take the photographs for the essay, or is it stock that you've got that you write the essay round about?
Well, no, I usually write it to so for the Manga Bay one, I went out and met people up at Glenfeshie and down in the Borders as well, the Border Forest Trust. So did interviews, chat to people, get the story, understand it. But the words inform the pictures. So I wouldn't just use stock for that. I'd always think about, it's like science. You got a hypothesis in your mind of what the story is about. You meet people, you talk to them, and suddenly it grows, or bits of it disappear, and new things appear into it. So that was very much, they're kind of parallel as you go along, but words don't come so easily. So I had the photos all done, but then actually bringing together the words to make sense is always the hard bit at the end. But all these longer term projects, I've written essays that people then publish as well. But I tend to focus on the photographs.
And you described yourself as a non-fiction photographer, and you were
exactly.
Clarify that.
When you first said it off camera, you're like, non-fiction. It just sounds like pretentious. And partly at first I was like, oh, I'm not. It does sound a bit, but it was a Dutch guy who said it to me. And photojournalism, the word has had tricky connotations, or even when you meet people, they say, you're a photographer, all right, what kind of photography? And it's just like, and they're like, do you do weddings? And there's always like weddings, or what do you? And so I just thought, well, photojournalists, people are like, so does that mean you write then? And I thought it doesn't really capture what I do. And so I thought non-fiction just bamboozles people and they don't actually ask any further. But also, you know what non-fiction is? You go to a bookshop, you know what non-fiction is. It's like history and geography and like things that pertain to reality. And whereas in photography, there's a lot of fictional narrative as well, which is great and good and awesome, and contemporary art enjoys that. It's not pure documentary. It's not photojournalism because it finds its home in a museum and gallery. I'm so pleased you asked, because no one does. The only person who's ever responded to it was at the RPS award ceremony. I went down after the first year, and she was an educator, and she looked at you, non-fiction, what the hell is that? And then like just laughed. I was like, well, yeah. So
I quite like the term non-fiction, because as you say, that people get quite easily sort of put into boxes, don't they? Sort of documentary photographer, or a photojournalist, or a street photographer, or a wedding photographer, or a general photographer, or a portrait photographer. So I like the idea of a non-fiction photographer. It covers a lot of genres, if you ask me. So
yeah, it keeps it broad enough, but also like you get something to hold on to.
And it sparks a discussion, and that's always a good thing as well.
Yeah.
Has anyone else got any other questions that they want to ask Kieran before we call it in tonight? I mean, if you want to even raise your hand in the reactions area, we can certainly unmute you if you want to ask a question in person. Don't know if there's. I think everyone has thoroughly enjoyed your talk.
Good. Thanks for being here.
Yeah. Kieran, thank you very much for taking the time out and discussing your project with us. And I'm sure our members tonight have found your project very interesting. And I'd certainly encourage them to go onto your website and look at your other work that's online, and order a copy of your book and some prints, and support the churches in Ethiopia. So thank you for taking the time out to join us tonight and speak to us. RPS Scotland have a series of speakers joining us from all over the world. Our next speaker is Robert H. Clark, who's a fine art landscape photographer, and he'll be joining us on Friday the 12th of November. So RPS members can access that talk for free by booking online via the RPS website. And in January, COVID permitting, we are hoping to meet in person, and more details of that can also be found in the Scotland section of the RPS website. So it just leaves me to thank you, our audience, for this evening, for joining us on this Wednesday night. We certainly hope you've enjoyed Kieran's talk. I know I'm certainly looking at the comments that are coming through, a lot of you have. So thank you very much for joining us, and we hope to see you again at a future event. So to all, good night and thank you.
Thanks for listening.